Well, I was born on April the 5th, 1923, at 41 Monmouth Street, Bramall, Sheffield 3. My parents were John Ashton and Annie Ashton, née Eggington, and we were living in a house with my mother and father, and in other words, grandmother and grandfather Eggington, also my father's father, Grandad Ashton. No brothers and sisters, no, I was the only one. We were there for years until I was married from there, but in between time I used to go to Springfield School.
All right.
Through the infants and then into the senior section. I was due to leave school at Easter, and my birthday was actually Monday after Easter, April the 5th, and that was the last day that I could have left school. So I was 14 years old when I went to work at E.H. Pickford's in Ecclesall Road, the Humber, Illman, Daimler agents for motor vehicles. I started working at 14 years old, and I used to have to sweep up the garage, wash the ramps down, mash teas, fill oil bottles, and my wages for 48 hours, that was 8 while 6 at night, every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning, 48 hours a week, was 7 shillings and sixpence, which is now about 35 pence a week.
Wow.
And out of that, I used to have to pay a shilling for my overalls that they supplied and washed, and also twopence for my stamps. And if I was 3 minutes late to work, they used to stop a quarter of an hour. My father, when I was born, times were very rough, and my father was out of work for a period, and he wouldn't go to the labour to sign on or anything. He was not that kind of person. He was a very honest father, and he would go out with a bucket full of whitewash and go around people's houses and whitewash the outside toilets, and even in the bin holes. There used to be bins outside in a bin hole, and he would whitewash in there, and that's how he earned a living.
Very proud then.
He was a very proud man. Yeah, he was very honest. If we used to put our order into the Sheffield and Ecclesall Co-op on Hanover Street, he would, if they sent anything too much over what we'd ordered and it wasn't paid for, I had to take it back there and say, "You've sent this too much." He was very honest. My mother was a tailoress. She worked for Isidore Newman, one of the top tailors in Sheffield, and also she worked for Isidore Newman, and she worked for Barney Goodman, who was two very well-known tailors in Sheffield. Well, Germany, Adolf Hitler was a very dictative man, head of the German country, Germany, and he was making advances in Poland and these places, and I'd only be about 17-year-old, and the war started, and I was the obvious age when I would probably get called up. And working at Pickford's in Ecclesall Road, I went from being in the garage into the stores because the manager in the stores were called up in the army, and I was working in the stores supplying other companies with whatever they required for Humber, Hillman and Daimler spare parts, and that was my job until I was called up. Many times during the beginning of the war we had to do duties throughout the night at E.H. Pickford's. We had to stop there for the night on fire watch and do our turn in looking after the premises with perhaps 2 or 3 other men that worked. We were just there in case there was any bombs or anything like that dropped on Sheffield or anything of that nature, and there was somebody there every night doing that job, and we were taken in turn to do that job. And during that period, of course, I think it was 1940 December, I think, there was the Blitz on Sheffield, and that night of the Blitz we were at home at 41 Monmouth Street, and during that period we had doors knocked through each other's cellars so that we could get into the next cellar next door, and we were in Mr. and Mrs. Gott's cellars at 43 Monmouth Street with Mrs. Blackwell, who lived up the big yard from us, and there were firemen up the road because incendiaries were dropped before the bombing started, and one of the firemen, they couldn't get the pump started to put fires out, and having a little knowledge about how engines started and everything, I went up the road and got the pump started for the firemen so that they could fight any fires that was local. During the night we found out that an incendiary bomb had dropped through Mrs. Blackwell's 3rd story high house and into her attic, and Father by that time had got his own window cleaning business. He'd started it and he was doing quite well as a window cleaner, and his ladders were all in our yard. So what we did, we got the ladders and we went up to the 3rd story, both Dad and I, and we took a bag of sand up with us and dropped it onto the incendiary bomb in the attic and put the fire out so that it didn't do much damage, to save that house and probably several other houses in the yard. Well, it was 2 nights actually, and where he left off on the first night, he started on that same point. That was the Wicker Arches where he left off, and then he did the rest of Sheffield another night, about I think 2 or 3 nights later.